There we go. I'm going to make sure that the stream gets going, then we'll start. Good. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Good. Welcome to you all. Welcome also to the many students who are watching this online, either watching it live or watching recording. We have lots of great questions, both from our online students, and we may have some questions here from our local students. So as always, we'll alternate. There are many more online questions, so we'll probably take more of those. And so with that, and I apologize in advance, especially for everyone who sent questions. There's many more than we can possibly cover. So if I fail to answer your question, I'm sorry. We'll do the best possible. Okay, first question is from Ganesh, who lives in San Francisco. Ganesh asks, what is upasana yoga? Is it the same as Ashtanga yoga? And here we've got a little problem with terminology, especially in the 21st century. We have, how many yogas are there? I mean, if every yoga studio wants to have their own yoga, and in fact some yoga studios will name their yoga after themselves. So if I have a yoga studio, come and learn Tadatmananda Yoga. How's that? What is Tadatmananda Yoga? Whatever I decide it to be. I'm going to make it up. But be ready for that. There are a lot of yogas which are named in that way. This is a modern, not an ancient convention. It's a modern convention. Of course, in ancient times, we know of bhakti yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga. But even there's some confusion about this word yoga, because in Bhagavad Gita, every title, every chapter ends in yoga. Chapter 2 is Sankhya Yoga, Chapter 3 is Karma Yoga, and so forth. Chapter 1 is Arjuna Vishada Yoga, means the sadness and despair of Arjuna on the battlefield. Tell me, is that a spiritual practice? You should be as sad as Arjuna? So even there, you have to be discerning. Yes, bhakti yoga, karma yoga, dhyana yoga, these are practices. Arjuna Vishada Yoga doesn't mean there's a practice of being sad. It turns out that those are, the word yoga there simply means chapter, title. And he mentions here, Ganesh says, what is upasana yoga? Is it the same as Ashtanga yoga? Well, it depends on what you mean by Ashtanga yoga. Because traditionally, there's only one kind of Ashtanga yoga, and that was taught by Patanjali. His yoga having 8 angas, 8 limbs, starting with yama, niyama, and ending with samadhi. So this is Ashtanga yoga until, I think, 1920s or 1930s, at which time there's a well-known, I think, South Indian yoga teacher who taught a certain kind of yoga style, his particular style of vinyasa. Vinyasa is where yoga postures are connected one to another. You don't just do one asana, you do one, and then that blends into the next, and then that blends into the next. It's called vinyasa. So there was one yoga teacher who taught this vinyasa yoga, and he decided to name it Ashtanga Yoga. That's the wrong name. You know, if you have a choice of names, you should name it after something which isn't so well known. So Ashtanga Yoga is well known as the yoga of Patanjali. But now, Ganesh lives in San Francisco. Well, especially in San Francisco, they make jokes. On every block, you will find, living there, you will find at least, on each city block, there will be at least one therapist and one yoga teacher. San Francisco culture. It is a joke. They themselves make these jokes. So if Ganesh is living in San Francisco, he can certainly practice Ashtanga yoga. Which one? I don't know. So he asks, what is upasana yoga? Upasana means meditation in general. It's often used to refer specifically to devotional meditation or other kinds of meditation as well. But somebody made up the name, upasana yoga. Maybe it was a girl whose name was Upasana. And so this is her brand. I have no idea. But upasana yoga is a modern creation. It's not a traditional thing at all. We're okay here? Yeah. Okay. Next question from Arun, who lives in Bangalore. How does the guru decide if the shishya is ready to become a sannyasi? He correctly says sanyasa diksha. Diksha is initiation into being a Hindu monk, sannyasi. How does the guru decide if the shishya is ready? It's one level of complication is not all gurus have the same process. Every guru will have their own criteria for who should be a sannyasi. One universal principle some people misunderstand, and that is a requirement for sannyasa is absolutely not being enlightened. Because if you're enlightened, you don't need sannyasa. And you can, there are stories of, actually it was Swami Tadatmananda, who lived in Himalayas long ago. He just took sannyasa himself. Why not? This was a great saint and sage and scholar. So he didn't need a guru to give it to him. He was already qualified by the fact that he was enlightened. The term that gurus used is vidvat sannyasa. That is sannyasa for one who is desirous of gaining enlightenment, vidvat. So, I'm sorry, vividisha, I've mixed up my terms, excuse me. Vidvat sannyasa is the sannyasa for one who has knowledge, vidvat. Refers to that Swami Tadatmananda I mentioned before. The other term, and I've reversed the terms, I'm sorry. The other term is vividisha, is a desiderative, one who has a desire for sannyasa. Vividisha sannyasa is what's given by a guru. No one gives vidvat sannyasa. If you're enlightened, you can just take it. But vividisha sannyasa is given by a guru. And then what are the criteria? Again, it's going to differ according to every guru. I'll give my own Guru, Puja Swami Dayananda Saraswati. His standards were not very complex. One is surprising. First is you should have been a student for a length of time, usually about 12 years. Not that you should have been a great student. Even even in a spiritual context, there are a few students sitting in the back of the room. In ashrams all over the world, that happens. Not every student is a great student. But that wasn't his criterion, that you should be a great student, nor that you should have mastered Sanskrit and you should be a great scholar, nothing like that. But just should have been his disciple and studying for a length of time, usually about 12 years. The other requirement, because sannyasa is given to help you continue on your spiritual path. That's the whole idea of sannyasa. It's a kind of protection. Both for you and others, I'll explain that in just a moment. It protects you as an individual from falling back into habits of worldly activities. So once you're wearing this dress, you're not going to, walk into a movie theater or go visit Las Vegas like this. So it protects you from doing that. There's the other side of protection, which I find very amusing. A lot of people misunderstand this. It's also a sign to protect women. And that is, this person is someone you should avoid if you're looking for a husband. Not good husband material is the idea. So, how does a guru decide? Other groups have different standards. Some more formal, they have very formal courses, but mostly less formal. Perhaps the least formal is you can show up in Hardwar or different places during the Mahakumbha, this big festival. And you can just show up and you go to the tent of a big organization called an akhara, and then you ask for sannyasa, and okay. Of course, they're giving sannyasa to about 20, 30, or 100 others, and you just go sit over there, join the group, and just go through all the rituals and do it. So there are different standards for different organizations. Arun goes on to ask, I'm given to understand that a lot of raga dveshas have to be resolved before stepping into sannyasa. The idea of that, it's not a rule, it's just a pragmatic observation. And that is, suppose someone really, really enjoys going to the movie theater and going to Las Vegas. They have raga. They really enjoy it. If that person takes sannyasa, it's going to create conflict for that person. They'll be conflicted because they have these worldly desires. So ideally, the best candidate for sannyasa is someone who's not so much ruled by these worldly desires. Next question from Sajit, who's living in Dubai. Sajit, I'm really confused about the term dharma. Could you please explain dharma in the context of svadharma? How do I understand what is my svadharma and perform karma as karma yoga? How does anyone understand what is his or her svadharma? And if I remember right, there was another question almost the same. This is from Vishesh, who's a PhD student in Bath, England. And almost same question. I have a question regarding dharma. How do I know what my dharma is? He goes on a little bit. Anyway, so let us... Swadharma means what your individual responsibilities are. And your individual responsibilities depends on the conditions of your life. Traditionally, in traditional Hindu culture, we had a fourfold division: brahmacharya, ashrama, the state of being a student, followed by grihastha ashrama, householder, vanaprastha, retired person, and finally sannyasi. So according to your stage of life, you'd have different responsibilities. That's kind of obvious, but to be honest, this svadharma, the principle of svadharma is obvious. The application is very subtle. So how do, they both are asking, how do I know what is my svadharma? I can't tell you. No one can tell you. No one can tell you what your svadharma. You're the one who knows your life. You know your family, who's dependent on you, who doesn't depend on you, what your responsibilities are, what your debts are, and so forth. You're the only person. Now, so you are the only one who can figure out what is your svadharma. No guru can tell you. But now, the tricky part is, svadharma often comes with, what shall we call them? How about conflicting responsibilities? So, good example, you have a responsibility to take care of your elderly parents. You have a responsibility to take care of your immediate family. And this turns out to be a big issue, especially in Indian families, I've seen, that it ends up there being conflict. Because if you put too much energy into taking care of elderly parents, then a family is neglected. If you put too much effort into the immediate family, then poor parents are struggling to get along. So this is where svadharma becomes difficult. And once again, you're the only person who can figure out what is the right balance. No one can tell you. You have to, it's your responsibility to figure it out. And if you say, but Swamiji, if I do this, there's that consequence. If I do that, there's that. That's life. Life is complicated. Who said it was going to be simple and straightforward? So then in determining svadharma, it is your responsibility to figure out what is the best course of action to fulfill all of your responsibilities, recognizing that we all have limitations. You know, you cannot be a perfect son and daughter and simultaneously a perfect husband and wife. Why? Because none of us can be perfect in any way whatsoever. What we can do is do the best we can, and to do it thoughtfully, meaning really to consider carefully the consequences of our decisions, the consequences of our actions. So you consider the consequences and then do the best you can. But no one can tell you. You know, so many times people think, oh, I have to go talk to my guru, find out what is my svadharma. I don't know. How? Guru doesn't know your life. Actually, in some cases, you know, there are, some of you know there's a tradition in India of having a kula guru, a family guru. And so if someone grows up meeting their guru every week or month or so on, then that guru knows you as well as anyone else. And maybe in that unique situation, maybe that guru could be a source of guidance, but that's becoming increasingly less common today. Okay, that is Sajit's question. Let's take one more here, and then we'll take questions here. Next question is Joao from Brazil. That would be a Portuguese name. I don't know how to pronounce Spanish and approach. Joao would be Joao or Joao. I don't know how to pronounce. Yeah, something. Anyway, nice to have his question. He's writing from Brazil. How do the four states of consciousness? Wait, I need a buzzer to go off. Because there aren't four states of consciousness. I'm sorry, you need to watch more of my videos. There are no states of consciousness. Consciousness has no states. There are 3 states of mind. There are no states. Anyway, this is not the topic. Actually, the topic is, how do these so-called 4 states of consciousness relate to Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga? Now we have a problem because we have 2 completely different spiritual teachings. This so-called 4 states of consciousness comes from Vedanta. And then Patanjali's system of yoga is a completely different system of teaching. And they're not compatible. They don't teach the same thing. They don't use the same methodologies. They are surprisingly different. For example, Advaita Vedanta is non-dualistic. Yoga is dualistic. Because yoga follows the Sankhya tradition, which is a system of dualism. So the 2 are disconnected, and which is not to say what. Notice what I'm not saying. Sometimes what's not being said is more important. I am not saying one is better. I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. What I am saying is they are mutually incompatible. However, that doesn't stop Vedantins from borrowing from yoga, nor does it stop yogis from borrowing from Vedanta. Whatever is useful, we use that. But when you borrow, don't expect compatibility. Don't expect them to be in lockstep teaching the same thing. That means, is it true to say that the meditation process until achieving samadhi is basically conditioning our minds to remain aware while our consciousness goes to sleep? If there were a buzzer, it would be going, consciousness doesn't go to sleep. A number of my videos deal specifically with consciousness and samadhi. A number of videos are out there. I would suggest if you're not, if I say consciousness has no states and consciousness doesn't go to sleep, if you cannot tell me why that's so, if you don't understand why it is that consciousness cannot have 3 states, cannot have 4 states, cannot have any states, or if it's not clear to you why consciousness doesn't sleep and wake up, if those aren't clear to you, watch those videos. There's one video, anyway, a number of videos on consciousness, on samadhi, etc. It's important to be grounded in some fundamental teachings. Okay, let's take some questions here. We'll take a question here first. You need the microphone.
Namaste, Swamiji. This is regarding your talk on Are You Enlightened Yet? Oh. At Salisbury. Mm-hmm. And my question is only regarding one statement. I think it is clear, but I think it'll help to get some clarity on it. You said that there is a common misconception that self-discovery is an event in time. I think that's the word you...
Enlightenment is an event in time.
Is an event in time. So that was my only question, because the rest of the talk makes it very clear that there is an entire process of assimilation followed by...
Self-discovery takes place at time, in a moment in time, but it's not an event. Knowledge is not an event. Knowledge is gaining knowledge. And let me just summarize that. He's making reference to a short talk I gave at the ashram, my guru's ashram, a couple of weeks ago. And many people ask that very question, are you enlightened yet? As if you wake up one morning and you're enlightened. A lot of silly ideas about enlightenment. It's a long process. First of all, there's a long process of preparation. That process of preparation can go on not for weeks and months. For most people, it goes on for years or even decades, that process of getting ready. Then at some point, if you are ready and if you have access to the proper teachings, both are required. If you are ready and you have access to the proper teachings, then you get it, in quotation marks. And that getting it is not the big deal that many people think. I think the way I described it in that talk, I says, how could I have been so stupid not to get this before? Honestly, that's what it is. It's not, oh, now I'm enlightened. This is, in fact, dangerous if somebody gets off on that kind of ego trip. It's just a recognition. A metaphor I didn't use in that talk. Enlightenment, Shankara says very clearly, jnanameva mokshaha. He says, moksha, liberation, is jnanameva. It's only knowledge, and that knowledge that removes ignorance, the ignorance about your true nature as Satchitananda Atma. So we could say, as Shankara says, enlightenment is knowledge, or alternatively, enlightenment is the removal of ignorance. Is absolutely accurate. If enlightenment is the removal of ignorance, think of this. When you get rid of ignorance, is that something big deal that you should be proud of? And the metaphor I've given, it's like when you take your stinking garbage out from your kitchen and throw it in the bin outside, are you really proud? You got rid of your garbage? Is that something to be proud of? To me, that's what it is, to get rid of ignorance. So we have a long process of preparation. There is perhaps a moment, or many moments, I would say, of insight in which that ignorance is removed. And I say many moments because ignorance is very complicated, lots of layers, lots of factors. So it's not really one moment, maybe at least for me, and I think for many others, many, many insights that take place, usually in a fairly limited period of time. If you're engaged in real intense study, you get this, then you get this, and you get this, then you get that. But even still, your mind is heavily conditioned by habitual thinking. You've built up this habitual thinking over decades. It's burnt into your neurons, as science will tell you, and it takes a long time to do the deconditioning of your mind. In Sanskrit terms, it's called deha vasana, habitual identification with your body and mind, and it takes a long time to remove that deha vasana. It's a practice called nididhyasana, Vedantic contemplation. So, are you enlightened yet? There's a long process of preparation. There are perhaps a moment or many moments in which you gain certain insights, and then there's a long process of assimilation and removing that habitual identification. Does that answer that question? Good, good. Other questions? Here.
So, you're in the last class, you mentioned that Atma is part of ignorance, like or no? Because like the thing is that you're very precise with wording things, right? So I just thought you would say it reveals the ignorance instead, but like I was confused.
I didn't say Atma is part of ignorance,
Okay.
so maybe you misheard.
Okay. And the second thing is, I remember in the past you said that when you used to listen to other people's problems, you used to be detached, but then you were very critical about that, and and it was engaging with emotions or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to know, how did you go about, changing that?
That's a pretty. I don't know how we can answer a question like that. How do you change from being detached to being emotionally engaged. To be detached in Advaita Vedanta doesn't, we speak of the value of vairagya, or anasakti, lack of attachment, lack of being deeply enmeshed in worldly life. But to be detached doesn't mean to be emotionally aloof. And the reason people get confused here is emotions are seen by many people as dragging you into worldly life. You know, your attachment to family, to friends, all of this stuff drags you, so to speak, into this worldly life. Well, if this Vedantic teaching has gone in sufficiently, you can have emotions without being dragged about by them. I mean, is our goal to be emotionless? That would be terrible. If the goal of Vedanta were to somehow erase our emotions, what an awful way to live a life without being able to feel anything. So someone who's been on this path long enough can have emotions without being afraid of them, have emotions without being dragged about by them, have emotions without being controlled by them. Because most people are controlled by their emotions. Your mind says, I should do this. Your emotions say, I should do that. What do you end up doing? Even though your mind knows this is the right thing, your emotions can drag you on the wrong path. Whose fault is it? It's not the fault of the emotions. The emotions are normal. If you are a normal human being, you're going to have emotions, including emotions that pull you in the wrong direction. But if these teachings have gone in sufficiently, just because your emotions pull you in the wrong direction doesn't mean you have to go along that way. You just decide that's not the right thing to do. So a mature person can have emotions without being controlled by them. Okay? So question in back. You'll need the microphone.
Hi, sorry for we came in late if I remember correctly, you have a background in engineering. Were you an engineer? Okay. I am an engineer too. So how has being an engineer uniquely helped you in your path of spirituality versus if you had any other profession or any other area of work in life? I'm just curious. It's just if you'd been a painter or something else versus being in, I guess, the sciences and engineering. How does that uniquely, help you on this path? Thank you.
Good. I think we can't generalize. So how engineering can help you as a background would depend on every person. All it did for me is it gives some training to the mind, to be able to think very logically, very precisely. I remember as a young engineer, they were throwing all this mathematics at us that we would never use in our profession. But we had to learn, what engineer uses differential equations in their day-to-day work? But we had to learn all this calculus and different Fourier transforms were a big thing for us. Who uses, and especially nowadays, you don't even have to learn it because there are computer programs to solve all those problems. Back when I was a student, there were no, you had to do it longhand. You had to figure out the circuit longhand, and these were powerful tools to do it. But nowadays, you just plug all the data into a computer program, push the button. Anyway, so how did it help me? Not a lot, except to train the mind to be very, very precise. There were some downsides of being trained as an engineer. My education was extremely narrow. I went to a university briefly. It didn't suit me. So then I went to a small engineering college. And it was just engineering, and more engineering. It was intense, 4 years of intense study. Very little outside of engineering. The advantage of a university education is it's broader. My education wasn't very broad, which means in the years that followed, I had to do a lot of my own remedial work, a lot of reading and kind of broadening out my education in other ways. And I'll just make a funny observation, then we have a lot of questions to take here. The other thing it did a lot of good for me is it kept me out of trouble. As a teenager in the late 60s, early 70s, it was a wild time, and I was a wild teenager, which is not good. It was bad. And so the good thing about college, I was out of trouble for 4 years. Okay, let's take some questions online. This is from Jayant. Jayant doesn't say where he lives. I'm unable to grasp the word consciousness, and I use to use the word consciousness in my self-inquiry and experiences. Instead, it's easy for me to use the word awareness. My question is, can you replace the word consciousness with awareness entirely? They're synonyms. In Advaita Vedanta, we have many words for consciousness. Chit, Chaitanya, Jnapti. If I thought I would find a few more. But they're all synonyms. And the meaning of any word is understood from context anyway. So you can use any of these words in any context. The context, if there's any subtleties, and there are, then the subtleties will come from consciousness. When we translate these words into English, we interchangeably use the words consciousness and awareness. I seem to have a preference for consciousness. Just somehow it seems more precise, but that's my personal feeling. If you, Jayant, or anyone else happens to prefer the word awareness, absolutely fine. There's not a shade of difference between the two. And please remember, though, what is most important is our definition of consciousness or awareness. Because nowadays, we have environmental consciousness. We use these words in so many ways. The patient is unconscious. How's that in the medical world? So, in Advaita Vedanta, consciousness and awareness are synonyms, no shade of meaning, and the meaning is that by which the activities of your mind are known. That's our definition. That by which the activities of your mind are known. Very simple, very precise. Call it consciousness, call it awareness, no difference. Also, can you explain what is meant by the word essence with respect to Atma? Actually, we use the word essence not with regard to Atma, but with regard to you as an individual. Essence means the fundamental nature of who you are. Your essence, your essential nature is consciousness. That's how we use the word essence. Essence would be a translation of the Sanskrit word swarupa. Swarupa means your own true nature. So call it swarupa, call it essence. And the idea is this: that which is your essence can never be removed. There are many aspects of who we are we could remove. You can lose a limb and you're still the same person. You can lose a chunk of your brain. Some people have cancers and chunks of your brain go away, and along with that brain, certain functions go away. But you still exist. You may have some, sadly, you may have some disabilities, but but you still exist. But you minus your essence, you minus Atma, you minus consciousness equals 0. If we turn it into equation, you minus an arm, you still are. You minus part of your brain or different functions. You lose your power of sight, hearing, etc. You're still you. But you minus consciousness equals 0. Make some silly equation out of it. All right. Question from Judy. Judy lives in Canada. And Judy asks, it's bothered me as I read and expose myself to various teachers, texts, and practices in the yogic tradition that sometimes it feels confusing. I feel like the starting point is the insight of the ancient rishis, but over the millennium, various branches and roots have stretched out in different directions, all of which is true. And that is all of this. Please set the phone aside. So all of this did indeed, as Judy said, come from the ancient rishis. But what's evolved from those ancient rishis is this whole, we'll call it Vedic tradition. Nowadays we call it Hinduism. But Hinduism means what? Everything that came from the ancient rishis, everything that evolved from those ancient rishis. And what evolved is both amazing and amazingly diverse. And amazingly diverse because one of the unique features of this Vedic tradition is that it's not one teaching. It's a whole variety of teachings. And the reason there are a whole variety of teachings is that uniquely the ancient rishis understood the concept of adhikari bheda. I like this term, I use it frequently. It describes the fact that we are all different. We all have differing religious and spiritual needs. And what one person needs might be very different from what another person needs. This contrasts with most other religions, which are more dogmatic and more narrow. This is the antithesis. Nothing narrow, nothing dogmatic. It says, it's more like going into a restaurant and getting a menu. So if you go into a restaurant, you have this long menu, and you've had this experience. You ask someone, what should I have? So we'll have some fun with this. Suppose I'm at the restaurant. You've invited me out for dinner. We're at a restaurant, and the long menu is there, and you ask me, what should I have? How should I know? And I'm being serious. How should a guru know what's best for you? They're not mind readers. At least I'm certainly not a mind reader. No one knows, but who knows what foods you like? You. Who knows what your personal religious and spiritual needs are? You. Perhaps a guru can help you refine and be more clear about what your religious and spiritual needs are, someone who can assist you in that process of determining what it is. What are you looking for? If you go to the restaurant and you say, I'm really in the mood for some matar paneer, something. So then if you go to the restaurant with a specific thing in mind, you just find it on the menu and you order that. So if you're clear about what you want, there's no problem at all. Problem is, many people are not clear about what we want. So there's a lot of discernment required. And ultimately, the responsibility for that discernment is on your shoulders, not the guru's. as I said, Guru, who can tell you what food to eat? What Guru can tell you? This is a common thing. What Guru can tell you what is the best mantra for you? What is the best meditation practice for you? Which deity should you pray to? In my opinion, no Guru can accurately guide you on such questions. Guru perhaps can help you clarify what your needs are, but the Guru can't tell you exactly what it is that you need. Judy, I hope that answers your question. Next question. How are we doing on time? This question is from Rajeshwari, who lives in Arlington Heights, Illinois. Rajeshwari. Let's see, long paragraph. At the end of the paragraph, whether something good or, here we go. She has a problem, she's gone through some tough things in life, and she has a hard time praying, she has a hard time with prayer of gratitude. She can pray in her prayers, she can, and I have to paraphrase because it's quite lengthy. Rajeshwari says that in her prayers, she can appreciate Ishvara as the karma, I'm putting all these words in her mouth, but she can appreciate Ishvara as karma paladatta. Everything comes to us through Ishvara. Sometimes good things come, sometimes bad things come, but everything is within the universal order, the intelligent order of the cosmos, which is Ishvara's intelligence. She seems to understand that, but she has a hard time, she says, with gratitude. I am very leery of being thankful for what I have. And she goes on to experience, actually, let me just share this with you. She had an experience, I'm just going to paraphrase. She's leery of being grateful for what she has because she moved to this country and thought, oh, this is great. And then her sister in India was diagnosed with advanced lung cancer. As a result, she looked back on her feeling that oh, it's great being here. And not only did her good feeling get erased, but I'm going to, pardon me for being an armchair psychologist. You know what that means, right? It means I'm totally unqualified, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's what the term means. So, I think what may have happened to Rajeshwari is she had a good experience followed by a really awful one. She felt really good about the good experience, and then something terrible happened. And now she feels, this is my armchair psychology, I shouldn't feel good when good things happen. I think this is what a psychologist would observe. So think about it. She had a very good experience, followed by a very bad experience. And having a bad experience, I'm guessing she felt embarrassed. What right did I have to feel so good about all this? I shouldn't feel, look at that, shouldn't. I shouldn't feel good. I shouldn't feel good about anything, because whatever I have or whatever good things are there could go away in just a moment, which is absolutely true, but that idea is I shouldn't feel good. I think as a result of her traumatic experience, having lost her sister in a very unexpected and terrible way, I'm sorry for your loss. But to me, this strikes me as a problem in psychology. A therapist might might be helpful or not even necessary. Assuming that I'm right, and I might not be, assuming that Rajeshwara feels like I shouldn't be happy, do you think Ishvara designed us in such a way in which we should avoid being happy, avoid enjoying the gifts Ishvara has given us? We're meant to enjoy. As human beings, we're meant to enjoy the blessings we've been given. We needn't feel guilty. In fact, this is a well-known principle in psychology. Survivor's guilt. There it is. There it is. It's survivor's guilt. She lost her sister. What right does, having lost her sister, what right do I have to enjoy my life when my dear sister died of cancer? Psychologists call that survivor's guilt. And it's an issue to be it's a very common issue. It's an issue to be overcome. If you're not able to overcome it on yourself, by yourself, then perhaps therapy will be of use. But from a Vedantic standpoint, there is no reason at all that whatever good things that come into our lives, we should enjoy them. Thank goodness that we do get, at least occasionally, good things do come into our lives. We should enjoy all of that. And one reason we should enjoy all of that is it'll give us a little energy to handle the bad things which are around the corner, which they're always there. Okay, then next question here from Angela. Where does she live? Doesn't say. Angela writes, what is the difference between ananda-maya kosha and Satchitananda Atma? The word ananda comes in both of these expressions, and the word ananda has completely different meanings in these different expressions. The basic principle is the meaning of a word always depends on context. For example, in the expression Satchitananda Atma, ananda cannot mean the experience of bliss due to context. In other contexts, ananda definitely can be an experience of bliss. So in your favorite restaurant, you're eating your, what do they say, matar paneer? And you're like, anand ho gaya. So it can mean bliss. In a restaurant, anand, in fact, that's not an uncommon name for Indian restaurants. Anand Bhavan, they'll call the restaurant. Nice. But in the expression Satchit Ananda Atma, ananda cannot mean the experience of bliss because experiences come and go. Atma doesn't. So it cannot mean experiential bliss. Then in the expression ananda-maya kosha, ananda-maya kosha is actually a very technical kind of Vedantic teaching referring to what remains covering Atma in deep sleep. In deep sleep, dreamless sleep, Atma is present. What else is present? Your body is absent because you don't experience your body in deep sleep. Your mind is absent in dreamless sleep. You don't experience any dreams, any mental activities in deep sleep. What do you experience in deep sleep? There are two ways to answer it. One way is nothing. The other way is to say you experience darkness, darkness of ignorance. Suppose your example I give again and again. Imagine standing in a dark closet, perfectly dark closet, with your eyes wide open. do you see? Do you have the power of sight? Yes. If I ask you, what do you see? You could say nothing. If I ask you, what do you experience? You could say, I experience darkness. What do you experience in deep sleep is very similar. You have an experience. I wouldn't say you experience nothing. I think it's more accurate to say you experience a figurative darkness of deep sleep. That figurative darkness of deep sleep in Advaita Vedanta, this is all a little technical, that darkness of deep sleep is due to the presence of ignorance. So this is, again, ananda-maya kosha is a technical Vedantic term. What that ananda-maya kosha refers to is ignorance. The ignorance that remains in deep sleep when you have the experience of darkness, the darkness of ignorance. Okay, we'll take one question. Actually, there's so many here. Let me just say, any other burning questions here? Let's take a question here. Otherwise, we'll lose.
Actually, I have a lengthy question and a private question. So can I get some few minutes after this? Like after the satsang?
Yes, you can come and meet with me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. A question up here, please.
We have great statements.
Please take the microphone. Yes, please.
We have great statements such as Prajnanam Brahma.
Which is a Mahavakya from the Rig Veda.
In the Mandukya Upanishad, there is a paragraph, a shloka, na antah prajnam, na bahih prajnam, na ubhayatah prajnam,
Yes,
na prajnanaganam, na prajnam, na aprajnam.
I'm familiar with that.
And prapanchovashamam shantam shivam advaitam. Chaturtam manyate sa vijnayaha.
Yes.
So, would you please tell me?
What is your question, please?
Question is, what is prajna? And is there a contradiction in understanding prajna?
Na prajnana is the expression, not prajna.
Na prajna, na aprajna, on the one hand. On the other hand, prajnana Brahma.
Okay. So, again, words gain their meaning from context. So these words were uttered presumably by some ancient rishi. I'm not sure who they're attributed to. And unfortunately, if I say something and you say you don't quite understand what I meant by it, you can ask me, Swamiji, what did you mean by that? You can ask me. We don't have the opportunity to ask this ancient rishi, what did you mean by prajna? Because the word prajna has different meanings in different contexts. As I've said several times today, meaning of any word, including prajna, is determined by context. Then how shall we understand that word? If we can't ask the ancient rishis, that's why we have commentaries. So, Shankara has a very extensive commentary, both on the Mandukya Upanishad and on Gaudapada's Karikas that accompany the Upanishad. And I don't remember at all what Shankara said in his commentary, but I have a feeling he would have said something like, prajna here means a specific knowledge, which we would then say vritti-jnanam, a thought. So most likely, Shankara would have explained that word as a mental activity, as a thought, as a vritti. You said it seems conflicting. That's the purpose of commentaries, to resolve any conflicts. And along with commentaries, the famous text Brahma Sutra is specifically meant to address different topics that we think might be contradictory. All of those contradictions are addressed then in the Brahma Sutra. And in this case, your question would be addressed in Shankara's commentary. You might want to get a copy of that commentary and see what he has to say. Okay? All right, let's take just a few more questions here, and then we'll wrap up. This is a question from Mickey. Mickey J. I wonder if Mickey is a nickname. I have no idea. Anyway, Mickey, it doesn't say where he lives. Mickey asks, does karma yoga have to be given up to attain jnanam, to attain enlightenment? So here, and by the way, there's actually a very subtle but important principle underlying his teachings, underlying his question. To do karma yoga, you have to be a agent of action, karta. You have to be just in a little less philosophical way, you have to be a willful person. In order to do karma yoga, you have to be a willful person. In order to be enlightened, you can't be a willful person. You have to be a karta, a non-agent of action. So karma yoga is crucial to prepare you for enlightenment. And the question now is, so since as a karma yogi, you are a willful person, and in order to become, so as a karma yogi, you are a willful person, but in order to become an enlightened person, you have to stop being a willful person. It's not that you stop being a willful person. You don't say, okay, I'm going to be a little facetious here. My karma yoga is keeping me from getting enlightened. Does that make any sense at all? So, but the idea of the question, by the way, the question is very thoughtful, and I don't mean to make fun of it. As long as you are a willful person, as long as you are an agent of action, you will not get enlightened. But do you have to give up karma yoga? Here we've got the problem. To give up is a willful act. Can you give up being a willful person? Can you use your will to give up will? You know, that's what they call the bootstrap problem. By the way, you need to get an image in your mind. You're wearing boots with straps on it. Pull up hard enough that you lift your body above the floor. That's a bootstrap problem. Can you do it? So there's a bootstrap problem here. So anyway, it's not that you give up karma yoga, but rather that it goes away. Not that karma yoga goes away. What goes away is the agent. At one point, I'll put it in first person terms. Suppose previously I was unenlightened, and which means I am using my will. I am identified with my body and mind and using my will to teach. Now, after enlightenment, that's not how it works. I am Satchitananda Atma, consciousness. I don't do anything. But thank goodness this body and mind keeps working. And everyone is sitting here and watching online. And so this body and mind goes on teaching because it's natural. Consciousness doesn't teach, but teaching takes place. That's after enlightenment. Now the question is, at some point, did I decide I'm going to stop being willful and start letting teaching happen without my willful effort? It's not something you do. More accurately, these teachings destroy kartritva. Kartritva means the state of being an agent of action. That goes away. And it's the seat of individual will, and the seat of individual will is not given up by using your will, that's our bootstrap problem, but rather the status of being an agent of action arises due to identification with mental activities. When identification with mental activities is destroyed by these teachings of Vedanta, then that kartritva, agency, automatically goes away. So we'll take just, I think, one more question here, and I think we'll wrap up here. Let's see, Steve asks, is there continued spiritual growth after enlightenment? We've already addressed that question before. We'll let this be the last question. This is from Pushkar. Pushkar is in Jaipur. Nice. Pushkar asks, my question is the difference between smriti and shruti. These are terms we use to categorize our scriptures. Some scriptures we call shruti, some scriptures we call smriti. Shruti literally means that which you hear. Smriti literally means that which you remember, but those meanings don't apply here. They're being used as technical terms. Shruti, used as a technical term, refers only to the Vedas, the 4 Vedas and all the parts of the Vedas, including the Upanishads, which we mostly study in Advaita Vedanta. Smriti refers to everything else. Everything means everything. All other scriptures fall under the category of smriti. The distinction is that shruti is that which was discovered and revealed by the ancient rishis. We call them mantra drashtaraha. They discovered these teachings, or they're also called the kranta darshis, those who could discover or see what others who could not see. Western scholars would call it divine revelation. So that's what the realm of shruti is. All other scriptures are called smriti, and the question is, if there's any conflict, which should we prioritize? There are no conflicts, as I said before. What you think is a conflict has already been addressed by many, many great scholars over the years. So if you find something, and this is an important point, let me just make it clear. If you find something that looks contradictory in this tradition, and you will, no doubt, I certainly did as a young student, then what should be your conclusion? Your conclusion should be, look at this. What this Upanishad says, and what this Upanishad, and this actually goes to your question, what this Upanishad says and what that Upanishad says isn't consistent. What's wrong with this? If these basic Upanishads aren't consistent, how can this whole tradition of Advaita Vedanta be taken as authoritative? And so you reject the whole thing because you found what you thought was a contradiction. Well, I found contradictions, but every one of those contradictions got resolved in my following studies. Eventually, I got to the point where I understood that these contradictions were resolved by scholars whose understanding makes me look like an intellectual midget. So how can my discernment, my proclamation, this is contradictory? Come on. How obnoxious it would be if I am more knowledgeable than all these centuries and centuries of great scholars who have resolved everything. So eventually I came to understand that anything that looks like a conflict can be resolved with some research. It's already been addressed. So far, I can't really say that. I know, after decades, this has been my life now since around, 1980s. This has been my life. So I haven't found any conflict that can't be resolved so far. Do you think I'll find one next week? That's my point. Okay. Last part of his question, does the Bhagavad Gita fall under shruti or smriti? Bhagavad Gita is part of Mahabharata. Mahabharata is part of the smriti. It's not part of the revealed Vedas. These are wonderful questions. Again, I apologize if I wasn't able to answer your particular question. We'll continue next week with more. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Good. See you next time.